When I was a kid, my dad was everything to me. He worked long hours as an executive at a logistics firm, always coming home tired, but still managing to toss a ball with me in the yard or ask how my day went. My mom adored him. She supported every move he made, packed his lunch every day, and stayed up late when he worked overtime just to make sure he didn't come home to a dark house. For 30 years, they were the couple everyone admired. Steady, dependable, loving. Or so we thought. It wasn't until his 58th birthday that the cracks started to show. My mom found a lipstick-stained napkin in his jacket pocket, not hers. Then came the late-night calls he'd take in the garage, the sudden business trips that always seemed to happen on weekends. When she confronted him, he denied everything, called her paranoid, told her she was going crazy. But she wasn't. She was watching her husband of 3 decades slowly fall in love with someone else. A 28-year-old woman named Hannah, who worked in the same building. He didn't even have the decency to end it with grace. One morning, he packed his bags and said he needed space, then moved into a downtown condo with Hannah before the week was over. My mom was crushed. She stopped eating, stopped leaving the house. My sister and I tried everything to keep her spirits up, but nothing could erase the image of him laughing on Facebook with a woman barely older than his youngest daughter. What hurt the most wasn't just that he left, it was how quickly he erased us. No calls, no messages. He even skipped Thanksgiving. Then, out of nowhere, we got an invite, delivered by mail, no less. It was for his retirement party, black tie, hosted at a golf club, and he had the audacity to write, "Would love to have the whole family there." My sister crumpled hers the moment she read it, but I held on to mine, my blood boiling as I stared at the gold trim on the card. That's when I got the idea. If he wanted to play the part of the proud father and beloved retiree, fine, we'd show up, but we wouldn't be bringing gifts. We'd be bringing the truth. The days leading up to the retirement party were filled with quiet planning and restrained fury. My sister and I didn't tell Mom what we were doing. We didn't want to raise her hopes or drag her into something that could fall apart. She still couldn't say his name without her voice cracking, and we weren't about to let her suffer through more false hope. But we knew one thing. Dad was going to stand in front of a crowd full of colleagues, old friends, and family pretending he was some noble, hard-working man who'd earned a standing ovation after 30 years of sacrifice. What they didn't know was that behind the curtain of his perfect career was a string of affairs, a home abandoned, and a wife left to crumble inside while he played house with his latest conquest. He built a fantasy and expected everyone to clap. So we decided we'd give him a reality check in front of all of them. And to do it, we'd need help. My sister reached out to a friend who ran a local print shop. Meanwhile, I started digging. I downloaded every photo I could find of him and Hannah from social media. Vacation pics he took while pretending to be on a work trip, selfies from restaurants with captions like "late meetings," and even one picture of him kissing her cheek with the caption, "So lucky to have him." We compiled everything into a slideshow, complete with dates, locations, and little details that would make it impossible to deny. We even got a copy of the receipt from a luxury resort he charged on the joint credit card 3 months before he left Mom. She never knew he spent $1,800 on a business retreat while she thought he was at a warehouse conference in Ohio. My sister, always the tech wizard, embedded it all into a sleek PowerPoint titled, "A Look Back, The Real Legacy of Charles Whitmore." We put it on a flash drive and tucked it into my jacket pocket, ready to plug it in when the moment was right. The night of the party arrived, and we dressed the part. I wore a tailored suit. My sister put on a sleek black dress. We smiled as we walked into the country club. Shaking hands with people who didn't know the man they were here to celebrate was nothing more than a fraud in cufflinks. He greeted us with open arms, acting like nothing had happened. "There they are!" He beamed. "My beautiful kids, I'm so glad you made it." I wanted to say, "You left us," but instead I smiled and hugged him because the game wasn't over yet. Hannah stood by his side in a glittery red dress, hanging onto his arm like she was posing for a magazine cover. She didn't recognize us. That would change soon enough. The club was filled with catered hors d'oeuvres, expensive champagne, and carefully curated jazz music floating through the air. Everyone was laughing, mingling, toasting the great Charles Whitmore. But the real toast hadn't happened yet, and when it did, no one in that room would forget it. Dinner had just finished, and people were beginning to gather near the stage for speeches. A projector screen was rolled down. Hannah stood near the podium, grinning like she'd won some grand prize, while my father adjusted his tie and clinked his glass. "If I could have your attention for just a moment," he said, his voice proud and polished. "Tonight isn't just about retiring from a long career. It's about celebrating the people who stood by me all these years, especially my family." I could see the lie catch in his throat for a second as his eyes flicked toward us. He didn't mean us. He meant the people who never called him out, the coworkers who only knew the polished surface, the mask he wore so well. I watched the crowd lean in as he cleared his throat and gestured to the screen. I thought it'd be fun to take a little walk down memory lane. That was our cue. My sister slipped away from the crowd, casually stepping over to the AV table. She popped out his USB and replaced it with ours before the tech guy even noticed. I stood there, heart pounding, pretending to sip champagne as the projector hummed to life. "Here we go," Dad said, smiling. "Some old work photos, family vacations, the good stuff." The first slide popped up, and for a moment, everything was silent. But it wasn't a family vacation. It was a picture of him and Hannah in a hot tub, her legs draped over his lap, drink in hand, time-stamped 6 months before he moved out. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The second slide was a screenshot of a hotel reservation. Then came the selfies, the work dinners, the receipts. Each photo was labeled, dated, undeniable. One after another, his entire affair unfolded on screen like a tragic comedy. Hannah turned ghost white. My father just froze. "What the hell is this?" he barked, stepping toward the screen as if he could somehow erase it with his presence. But it was too late. People had already seen enough. A woman in the back gasped. One of his former employees shook his head and walked out. "You lied to everyone," my sister said loudly, stepping forward, voice steady and sharp. "You left our mother after 30 years. Not for love, not for growth, but because you wanted to relive your 20s with someone who didn't know who you really are." My dad looked like he'd been punched in the chest. His hands trembled. "You think this is funny?" he asked, trying to gather whatever dignity he had left. I stepped beside her. "No," I said. "We think it's fair." The room was dead silent now. No more applause, no more toasts. Just the unraveling of a man who thought he'd never be held accountable. For a long moment, the room remained frozen. The slideshow still paused on an image of my father and Hannah at an upscale rooftop bar, her hand gripping his thigh, both of them laughing like teenagers. The silence was so thick, it almost felt like a physical weight pressing down on everyone there. My father looked around helplessly, searching for someone, anyone, who might jump to his defense. But no one did, not even Hannah. She had quietly stepped away from his side, her lips slightly parted, eyes scanning the photos like she was seeing them for the first time. Maybe she hadn't realized he kept so many trophies of their affair, or maybe she never thought he'd be foolish enough to let them surface like this. Either way, the glimmer in her eye had vanished. The red dress, the lipstick, the practiced smile, it all looked like a costume now, like she had dressed for a role that no longer existed. My father's boss stood up slowly, adjusting his blazer with visible discomfort. "Charles," he said, voice low and controlled, "maybe we should take a break. This isn't appropriate." The word hung in the air like a blade. Inappropriate, embarrassing, pathetic. My dad opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He looked like a man watching his kingdom turn to ash. One by one, guests began to excuse themselves. Not loudly, not rudely, but with the kind of disappointed silence that cuts deeper than shouting ever could. One woman walked past him on her way out and said, "You should have just stayed home." Another older man shook his head and muttered, 30 years, and you threw it away for that?" Hannah flinched, but said nothing. She picked up her purse and walked out alone, her heels clicking across the marble floor like tiny hammers, nailing shut the coffin of their fantasy. We didn't stay much longer. The screen had gone dark. The caterers were beginning to clean up, whispering amongst themselves. The jazz music had stopped, replaced by a heavy, awkward quiet that seemed to follow us even as we stepped outside. In the parking lot, my sister finally let out a breath and laughed. Just once, short and sharp. "Did you see his face?" she said. I thought he was going to melt. I didn't laugh. Not because it wasn't satisfying. It was. But because behind all that rage and planning, I felt something heavier too. A strange kind of grief. Not for the man he became, but for the one he used to be. The dad who showed up to soccer games. The husband who once held my mom's hand in grocery store lines. That man was gone. And tonight, we had buried him. Not with anger, but with the truth. The fallout from the party came fast. The next morning, my phone buzzed with texts from family members we hadn't heard from in years. Some stunned, some supportive, and a few angry we aired dirty laundry in public. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that my mom, who had been kept in the dark the whole time, finally knew she wasn't crazy. We sat her down and told her everything. Showed her the photos, the receipts, the speech, all of it. At first, she didn't say a word. She just sat there, quiet, her hands trembling slightly as she flipped through the printed slides. But then she looked up, tears welling in her eyes, and smiled the smallest, saddest smile I'd ever seen. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not letting him rewrite our story." That moment hit me harder than anything else. For the first time since he left, she stood a little straighter. The woman who had been shattered was slowly starting to come back to life. As for my father, he tried to do damage control. He called me 3 days after the party, his voice hoarse and clipped. "You blindsided me," he said, as if he had any right to talk about betrayal. That was supposed to be my night. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't apologize. I just said, "It was your night, and that was your legacy." Then I hung up. He tried my sister next. She didn't answer. Eventually, we heard from a mutual friend that Hannah had left him, said the whole thing was too humiliating and that she wasn't built for that kind of scandal. He'd apparently taken a leave of absence from his country club board, and the retirement congratulations on his social media had gone radio silent. The man who used to walk into every room like he owned it was now dodging eye contact in grocery stores. And the best part? We didn't have to touch a thing. The truth had done all the work. Mom eventually got her groove back. She started going out with friends, got a fresh haircut, even joined a painting class downtown. Every so often, she'd get a letter from Dad. Rambling apologies, pathetic attempts to explain himself. She never responded. She kept them in a drawer in the kitchen, tucked behind the recipe books. One day I asked her why she hadn't thrown them out. She shrugged and said, "They remind me of what I survived." It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about him. It was about reclaiming something that had been stolen. Her dignity, her narrative, her peace. And for us, the kids he thought would forever play along, it was about one thing: making sure the man who once held our family together never got to pretend he hadn't torn it apart. We didn't destroy him with fire. We destroyed him with facts. Quietly, permanently. And when we finally walked away, we did it without looking back.